Has it been months that you've been working on your overhead press and seeing little to no progress? Trust me, I've been there. Today's video, I'm gonna give you 5 tips that are gonna help you immediately improve your overhead press, let you hit some new PRs so you can improve that shoulder strength and or your overhead pressing movements. Let's get into it. Hey there, Brandon Splay here from Thirst Gym, and today I'm gonna give you 5 game-changing techniques to immediately improve your overhead press and allow you to add more weight to that bar while you're doing the exercise. From personal experience, I've always hated the overhead press. Even somebody with short arms that's kind of built to overhead press doesn't really like it because of the snail's pace that it takes. It's really hard to add 5 to 10 pounds to the barbell week after week and make long-term steady progress. It's really easy to hit a plateau. So these are 5 technical things that you can immediately implement today to walk into the gym and hopefully start adding more weight to that barbell immediately. Let's go. All right, the first mistake that you're probably doing or having is that when you're pressing, the barbell is actually coming out in front of you instead of coming directly in line with your body overhead. All right, so a coaching cue that I like to use is shoot your head through the window or press up and back with the barbell. And what that's going to do is going to allow the barbell to actually get truly overhead. So chances are if you are taking your overhead press here and you're actually coming and leaving the barbell up here, this is going to, one, immediately limit the amount of weight that you're able to use. So the big thing is to keep those elbows stacked underneath the wrist. And as you go to press, as soon as that bar gets past your head, you shoot your head through the window and get that barbell directly over your heels, okay? So it's a little bit of an arc, but doing that is, one, gonna feel tremendously better on your shoulders, and number 2, it's gonna allow you to be able to hold this position longer. So as you start to struggle and you get that head through, you're in a more biomechanical advantage-based position to finish the rep. So the big thing is make sure you're shooting your head through the window to optimize your technique and your leverages to finish the lockout of the overhead press. All right, the second most common mistake that I see in technical fixes you can work on is your breathing and your bracing. Now, I've talked about this in lots of different lifts and lots of different videos of the importance of not only taking a big diaphragmatic breath into your quote unquote belly, but also bracing and keeping the ribs pulled down and actually feeling that stiffness. So the overhead press is no different than the squat and deadlift in this case. However, what you are going to want to make sure is that as you're bracing and bracing, your lats are tight and pulled in as you begin to go to overhead press. So when I'm here and I walk out to do my overhead press, when I take my breath, I want to make sure my ribs are pulled down a little bit so that I'm more stacked over my rib cage. And then I'm going to take my breath in, brace, exhale at the bottom. Big brace in, overhead. So ideally, you're going to want to try to breathe and brace on each lift or about every 2 lifts, depending upon what kind of load that you have. Creating that rigidity and stiffness is going to allow for better transfer from the ground up into the barbell. And then going back with our first point as well, it's actually going to allow you to be more stable in that overhead press position and the lockout position of the exercise. All right, the third mistake that I see most commonly in the overhead press is going to be the wrist position, and namely that the barbell is back behind the actual portion of the wrist. So the barbell is actually sitting back here towards the back part of my forearm. That can cause quite a bit of elbow discomfort, especially down here on the medial side. However, what we want to find is when we actually grab the barbell, whether your thumb is around or you're using a false grip, it does not matter. You want to make sure that your wrist stays stacked that entire time. So your wrist can be cocked back just a little bit so that the barbell can actually sit in the meat of my hand. I don't want the barbell in the actual finger portion of my hand, okay? You could use your overhead press catching from a cleanest position. However, to maximize just the strict overhead press, you ideally want those knuckles as close as you can to the ceiling and that barbell right there in the meat of that fat pad so that my wrist and my elbow can be stacked together here. So if I go to unrack it from this position, even whether I'm here or here, does not matter. Notice that it is in a good, strong position for me to actually press overhead. I don't want to press like this because, again, I'm not gonna have the leverages to optimize that pressing. Now, you can use wrist wraps as well to better lock your wrist into place, especially for doing heavy attempts. I think that's not a bad idea at all. but make sure you're squeezing the crap out of that barbell and you're keeping your elbow or your wrist always stacked on top of your elbow. All right, mistake number 4 that I commonly see is the overextension or hyperextension of the lower back to finish repetitions, okay? We wanna make sure this is an overhead press, not a high incline press. Now, obviously, if you're struggling to get the weight up in terms of a competition and you're doing everything you can, that's one thing. But from a training perspective, when we overhead press, we want to make sure, again, that our ribs are pulled down and we're stacked as much as we can. And as we actually go to do that, I wanna make sure I'm not here to actually press the weight up. I wanna keep my ribs pulled down and stacked, hips over my feet, so that when I take that big breath in, I've got my wrist towards the ceiling. I'm actually going to press here. I can actually, one, get my head through the hole. So if I lean backwards, I can never get my head through the hole. And it's also gonna feel better on my back as I go to do it. Now, this is going to be somewhat dictated based upon your shoulder mobility and your thoracic spine mobility. I'll leave a full video covering everything in terms of shoulder mobility and health in the description box below to be able to help you out with that. Because if your shoulder mobility is really bad, like myself, chances are overhead pressing may not be the best exercise for you, and that's entirely okay. However, I do also know some people still want to overhead press. So the key here is to make sure that if you don't have those ranges of motion, you're still not using your lower back to arch and press that barbell here. Do everything you can to keep that stacked and actually use your shoulders and your upper body to press that, and even maybe feel your glutes and your hamstrings to help keep your pelvis under control. We don't want to have that J-Lo booty as I go to actually press and create that big C curve. That's gonna cause long-term problems, and you're also just not gonna have an optimized overhead press. All right, and the 5th mistake that I commonly see is not controlling the barbell on the descent and letting that barbell actually crash into their body. One, obviously, it's not gonna feel comfortable, but learning how to absorb the force on the way down can allow you to be in a better position if you have to do multiple repetitions. So as I'm coming to the bar and I'm gonna do my actual overhead press here, as I come down, if this is a heavy weight, I should try to just naturally control it and press back. Now, if you happen to be doing like a push press or something and you're coming here, getting the push and it comes down, notice that as it comes down, I actually wanna bend and absorb that weight with me. I want to bend my knees, allow my butt to sink down as I absorb that weight. I don't want to come from here, boom, right on top of my chest. Even just doing that with just the barbell did not feel good. So no matter how I'm getting it up here, if I have to come down, I'm going to dip into my hips, absorb that, and then repress, and then obviously I can return to the rack. So the goal is to absorb the force on the way down and actually use our power positions from our jerk and our weightlifting friends to better receive that barbell, so that if you happen to be doing repetitions, especially from like a competitive perspective, or if you're trying to just get as many reps as you can in a certain period amount of time, that you're able to end up in a strong position to be able to go back into each rep as you're doing the set. So there you have it. There are the 5 technical fixes that you can make and mistakes that I see regarding the overhead press. Now, chances are if you're watching this video, one of these probably applies to you. So take one thing away from this video and go apply it to your overhead press so that you begin to see progress. You can also let me know in the comment section below which one of these coaching cues might help you the most in terms of improving that overhead press. If you happen to like today's video, you can also hit that like button, leave me a comment, hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate it. I drop new videos every single week, and I'll see you at the next video.